Have you ever felt completely lost? Like you were walking around aimlessly, not knowing where to go or what to do? Maybe you're experiencing this right now, or maybe you've felt this way at some point in your life. But what do you do when everything seems aimless? Is there an easy answer? Let me tell you a secret. When we're lost, it's often because we're on the cusp of a major transformation. And the good news is that the solution to this feeling of disorientation is easier than you might think. But to understand it, you must stay until the end. I'll show you what you can do to find peace, direction, and even the strength to keep going, even when the world around you seems to be falling apart. Are you ready to discover that the answer has always been within you? Stay with me to the end and let's find our way together. How often have you felt lost in a dark tunnel, not knowing which way to turn? As if no matter how hard you tried, nothing made sense and life seemed to be a tangle of uncertainties. Have you ever felt this way? Have you ever found yourself questioning the purpose of everything around you? These moments are difficult, aren't they? The feeling of being completely lost can come in many forms. It can be a loss, an unexpected change, a mistake made, or even an unexplained emptiness. Sometimes the world seems to be falling apart around us, and we find ourselves trying to find a thread of hope in a sea of confusion. But know, dear friend, that there's nothing wrong with feeling this way. It's not a sign of weakness or failure, but of humanity, of being alive. When I found myself in moments of despair, even when the crowds around me questioned me, the only thing that guided me was my trust in the Father. He never left me, even when the road seemed dark and endless. When everything around me was silent, His presence was stronger than ever. It is this silence that we often need to hear. When we feel lost, the first thing we need to do is stop and listen. Stop the chaos and allow the sound of divine love to enter our hearts. But are we willing to listen to this message when the inner noise is so loud? When fear grips us and our minds are lost in unanswered questions? This is the moment right at the point of our weakness, when true strength is revealed. So what do we do when the world seems dark? First, you must understand that darkness is not permanent. It is part of the process. In one of my most challenging moments, the lack of answers and the feeling that I didn't know what to do with the pain taught me a great lesson. The darkness is the space where rebirth happens. It is in the silence, in the emptiness, that the inner light begins to shine. No matter how dense the night seems, the light will always be there. It doesn't go away, even if you can't see it. The key is not to react impulsively to what we feel. When we find ourselves in a moment of disorientation, the temptation is to look for an immediate solution, to try to rush the process, or to look for external answers. But what we need is to allow ourselves to be led. Remember that even the desert has a purpose. Suffering is not meant to destroy us, but to transform us. Have you ever noticed how pain, when it comes, forces us to look within? It challenges us to question our beliefs, to examine our choices, to reorient ourselves. This process is an invitation from the Father for our soul to open up to the true wisdom that lives within us. What often seems like a loss is actually an opportunity to gain a new perspective. I know it may seem difficult now, but each of these difficult moments holds a possibility for renewal. What you are experiencing, though it may seem like an end, can be the beginning of something new. It is in the darkness that the stars shine brightest. You must allow time for the light to reveal itself. The fear you feel now can become strength. If you choose to trust and wait in peace. Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? The more desperate we are, the more our heart tells us to run away from the pain. But as we learn to stay without rushing out of the darkness, we begin to realize that we are being formed for something greater. Trust me, the light is closer than you think. And by allowing the stillness to envelop us, we can see that He has never left us alone. Now you may ask yourself, but how can I find peace within myself when there is so much chaos around me? The answer is simple, but profound. It's not about finding peace on the outside, but on the inside. As you begin to quiet the outside voices and look into your heart, you begin to realize that the peace you seek is already within you. It has always been there. It just needs to be recognized. When darkness seems to engulf everything, remember that true peace begins when we allow ourselves to stop. When we accept that sometimes we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. That's the starting point for finding the right direction. The path to light begins in the heart that opens to stillness. And so little by little, peace begins to take hold. What do you do when the world seems dark? The answer is to stop, trust, and wait in silence. For it is in silence that the heart begins to hear the truth that is never lost. The truth that the Father is always with you, guiding your every step. Now that you've begun to understand this movement of stopping and listening, you may be wondering what comes next. What comes after we let ourselves be led through the darkness? How do we really come out of this moment of uncertainty and find the light we are looking for? Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered if you're failing? Have you ever felt lost, aimless, and thought that meant something was wrong with you? Sometimes when life presents us with challenges, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that this feeling of disorientation is a sign that we're not good enough, that we're weak or incapable. But let me tell you something you might need to hear. Feeling lost is not a failure, it's simply a sign. It's a sign that you're ready to grow, that something inside of you is calling for transformation. In fact, feeling lost can be one of the greatest blessings you can experience. When we feel lost, we are being invited to go beyond what we already know, to expand, to learn new ways of living and relating to the world and to ourselves. I've seen this happen in many hearts. People who felt lost ended up discovering parts of themselves that had never been accessed. What seemed like an end was actually just the beginning of a new inner journey. And it was from this sense of disorientation that many began to take the first steps toward a deeper purpose. When you feel lost, what's happening is that your soul is asking for a new direction. Maybe you're stuck in old patterns, or maybe you've strayed from the path that truly resonates with your heart. The important thing is that this feeling of loss is not something to fear, but something to welcome. It doesn't mean that you have failed, but rather that you are being challenged to grow in ways you have not yet imagined. I remember moments on my walk when the feeling of being lost was intense, moments when the crowds receded and the challenges seemed unbearable. I may have wondered if I was failing, but I knew that emptiness was just a starting point, not the end of the story. I knew that behind all the pain was an opportunity for transformation. And that's what you need to understand now. This getting lost is where transformation begins. When you allow yourself to be lost, you make room for the new truth to emerge. Imagine that every time you feel like you don't know where you're going, you're actually creating space for something new to come in. Feeling lost isn't about failure. It's about preparing for something greater, something that you may not have understood yet, but that is in full formation within you. Why is this happening? The universe, life, and God Himself lead us along often, tortuous paths, because it is in moments of disorientation that our souls become more receptive. When external answers are no longer enough, we are led to look within, to that which is eternal within us, to the essence of our being. And that, my dear friend, is a great gift. I'm not saying the process is easy. I know the pain of helplessness and uncertainty can be overwhelming. But deep down, you know that this feeling of being lost will pass. And when it does, you'll be stronger, wiser, and more connected to your truth. What seems like a black hole of uncertainty will be the key to your renewal. If you think about it, all the great changes in history, in my life and in the lives of so many others, began with a moment of loss, a moment of doubt. At that point when everything seems out of control, you're actually on the cusp of something great. The secret is to understand that feeling lost is just a sign that your soul is growing, that something new is about to be born within you. Now you may ask yourself, so how can I use this feeling of being lost to my advantage? How can I do that when I don't know what to do? The answer, my friend, is closer than you think. Change begins within you. And the first step is to understand that peace doesn't come from solving everything immediately, but from accepting what is happening now. Accepting that you are lost is the first step towards freedom. When we accept our vulnerability, our inability to control everything, we begin to make room for true strength to manifest within us. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the process and allowing life to gradually reveal what you need to know. And that is when you begin to understand that being lost is not a failure. On the contrary, it's a sign that you're closer to finding what really matters. You see, Every time we go through a moment like this, when life seems to have no meaning, an inner light begins to shine, however faintly, and that light gradually guides you and brings clarity. The key is to stop fighting what you are feeling and just allow this process to happen. What follows this moment of uncertainty is a deep reconnection with who you truly are. And when you look back, you'll see that everything that happened, even the pain and confusion, had a purpose. For it was through it that you were strengthened. It was through feeling lost that you found your true essence. And that, dear friend, is the beginning of a new journey. A journey where there is no failure, only moments of learning and evolution. Now, that you understand that being lost is not a sign of failure, but a door to growth, the question arises, how can we deal with this feeling of disorientation in a more peaceful way? What do we need to do to begin to rebuild our peace and direction? When you find yourself in a place where everything seems out of control, where the future is uncertain and the present seems distant, what are you really experiencing? Is this feeling of being lost a matter of not knowing where to go, or not knowing who you are? What happens inside you when you feel lost, and what does it really mean for your journey? We often associate the idea of being lost with a detour, a mistake, a failure. We think that being lost means that something has gone wrong, that we are off track, or that we are failing in our life's mission. But actually, what it means to be lost is much deeper than that. When you feel lost, it's not that you've lost something or that it's all been in vain. It's actually a sign that something inside of you is calling your attention to a new path, to a new phase. I've seen people on my journey who felt lost, but were actually on the verge of a great inner transformation. What seemed like a detour, a failure, or a loss was actually an opportunity to find something much truer, deeper, more authentic within themselves. Being lost, deep down, is the soul saying it's time to leave behind something that no longer serves and make room for something new. Have you ever thought that getting lost is really just a pause that life offers us so that we can recalculate our route and reassess what really matters? When you get lost, you're not really lost. You're temporarily distancing yourself from what no longer serves you, from what no longer resonates with your truth. Sometimes we need to get lost in order to reconnect with our true essence. I've always told people that when despair knocks at the door, it's time to step back and allow yourself to feel without rushing to find a way out. Because often, in the moments when we feel most lost, we are actually on the path to discovering our true strength. Lost is just a sign that something new is about to be revealed. What you are looking for deep down may be a deeper connection to your being, something waiting to be discovered. When someone feels lost, they are not necessarily in a bad place. It may be time to recalculate the route, to look around and realize that there is much more ahead. I've seen many people get lost, only to discover later that what seemed like frustration was actually opening doors to a fuller, more meaningful life. So you may ask, how is this possible? How can someone find something good in a moment of total uncertainty? The answer lies in trust. When you allow yourself to be lost without resistance and accept this moment of uncertainty, you begin to make room for the universe to show you what is necessary for your evolution. Life is not linear, and often what appears to be a mistake, a failure, or a stumble is actually an invitation for a new beginning, a rebirth. Getting lost is not an end, but the beginning of a new chapter. To be lost is also to give up control. The moment we allow ourselves to not know where we're going, we stop trying to control everything. When you get lost, you're actually being invited to trust life more, to trust something bigger, something that can't be seen with the eyes but lives in the heart. In that space of vulnerability, you begin to realize that you don't have to have all the answers, that the true path will reveal itself in its own time, gradually. I too have had moments in my life when I didn't know what the next step was. But I knew that deep down, the true wisdom lay not in ready-made answers, but in trusting that in each moment of uncertainty, life would lead me where I needed to go. The feeling of being lost was not a burden, but an invitation to connect more deeply with the Father and the truth He has for me. And that invitation is something you can accept as well. Do you realize that the feeling of being lost doesn't really mean that you are directionless? It just means you've been invited to open your eyes to something you haven't seen before. Getting lost is actually a process of rediscovery. It's leaving your comfort zone, the familiar, and entering territory where new possibilities can emerge. And it is in this unknown territory that you find your true strength. What seems like loss or failure is actually an opportunity to leave behind old beliefs and patterns that no longer serve your greater purpose. When you feel lost, you are being challenged to look inward and question what is truly important to you. Perhaps you have become lost in external expectations, in the search for approval from others, or even in the routine that has gradually drowned out what is most true within. And here's the key. When you feel lost, you can stop and look inward. And when you begin to do that, you begin to realize that direction doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the inside. The true path lies in the heart, in the choices you make at every step, and in the courage to follow your own truth even when the future seems uncertain. Now that you understand what it means to be lost and how this is actually an opportunity for your transformation, you can ask yourself, how can I connect more deeply with my truth, even when I feel lost? How can I find peace within when everything around me is in disarray? When everything seems to be going wrong, when life seems chaotic and you feel lost, the first thing that comes to mind is, what do I do now? The temptation is to act immediately, to try to fix everything, to find a quick solution to the problems that lie ahead. I know how tempting that sounds, the urge to fix everything at once, to do something to take control of the situation. But the truth is that when everything seems wrong, the best thing to do is often to stop. I understand that this may sound counterintuitive. After all, who doesn't want to fix things as quickly as possible when they feel lost, right? But when circumstances are turbulent, the first step is not to react, but simply to stop and breathe. The pressure we feel to do something can be overwhelming, but this rush can lead us to make impulsive decisions that often don't bring the peace we so desperately seek. Sometimes the real healing movement begins when we decide to take a step back. If you find yourself in the midst of chaos, the first thing you should do is take a moment to calm down. Take a deep breath. Breathe and feel the life in each breath. It may sound simple, but this act of stopping and breathing creates a space of stillness within you, where you can begin to hear your own voice and realize that despite what is happening around you, you are being guided by something greater. In those moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart, I learned that the first thing I had to do was stop and trust. I knew that no matter how strong the storm, it wouldn't last forever. And in that silence, I realized that I didn't need to have all the answers right away. I just needed to trust that everything had a purpose and that clarity would come. But only when I was ready to hear it. So what do you do when everything seems wrong? The simple answer is to calm your heart. Often our reactions are motivated by fear and anxiety, and when we act on these emotions, we distance ourselves from our true wisdom. By stopping, by pausing, you create a space where fear loses its power and calm begins to fill every part of your being. This is the moment when the mind calms down and you begin to see things more clearly. I know that deep down the fear of being lost makes us want to solve everything at once. But actually, when you allow yourself to stop and listen to what's going on inside, you put yourself in a much stronger position. The chaos around you may continue, but you will find that there is a peace within you that doesn't depend on external circumstances, and that will guide you. When everything seems wrong, you don't have to have all the answers. You just need a moment to breathe, to anchor yourself in the truth that even in chaos you are guided. I've seen this happen to so many people when instead of trying to control what they couldn't control, they simply allowed the flow of life to guide them with calm and confidence. The real secret to finding peace in the midst of chaos is to allow the moment of stillness to be the first step toward transformation. Breathing is our anchor. It is in silence and stillness that we can perceive the divine presence in our lives, even when the world around us seems to be falling apart. Don't underestimate the power of pausing. This is the moment when you begin to take back control of your life, not through hasty action, but through patience and trust in God. Have you ever experienced that moment of stopping? Have you ever felt how, when you just breathe and allow yourself to stop, the answers begin to emerge more clearly? Most of the time, what you need is not an immediate solution, but a broader vision. A vision that comes only when you allow yourself to be still. By stopping, you give your mind permission to align with the greater truth that exists within you. Now that you have taken the first step of stopping and breathing, you might ask yourself, how can I move forward and find direction when I don't have all the answers right now? How can I turn this moment of pause into something that really helps me move forward and reconnect with my purpose? In moments of confusion and disorientation, it's easy to feel that fear will consume everything. I get it. Anxiety can seem like an unbeatable force, a constant weight that drains your energy and clarity. But what I want to tell you is something profound and transformative. You don't have to carry this burden. Fear, like all the emotions we feel, doesn't have to define who we are. And more importantly, it can be released. When everything seems out of control and you feel lost, anxiety, there's often a reflection of the fear of not knowing what to do. The mind starts creating stories, worrying about the future, dwelling on the past and questioning every step. But anxiety is actually a sign that we are living in the future or the past, not the present. And the present is the only place where there is real peace. The first thing you need to understand is that anxiety arises when we become disconnected from the present. When we worry about what's to come or dwell on what's already gone, our minds get lost in thoughts that take us away from the peace that is always available. The peace we so desperately seek is here now, and the way to find it is through presence. I've always said that the greatest gift you can give yourself in times of anxiety is to return to your breath. When you're in the midst of an inner storm, it seems hard to believe that something as simple as breathing can bring any kind of relief. But I assure you, by focusing on your breath, you begin to reconnect your mind to your body. And this is a crucial step in reducing anxiety. Breathe deeply. Feel the air going in and out of your body, and notice how it begins to reduce the inner turmoil. Breathing reminds us that we are alive, that the present moment is the only one that exists. The moment you connect with your breath, you begin to realize that fear is just a mental construct. It's not the reality of the moment you're in. You also need to understand that fear often comes from our need to control things. When we feel lost, it is natural to want to solve everything quickly and put everything in place. But life doesn't work that way. Answers don't always come immediately, and true peace comes when we learn to accept uncertainty and trust that things will unfold as they should. I know that when fear takes over, it can be difficult to think clearly. Worries pile up, the mind races, and it feels like everything is falling apart. But it's in those moments that you should remember something important. You are not alone. The divine presence that has always been with you is at your side, and the peace you seek is already within you. True peace is not the absence of chaos, but the ability to find stillness even in the midst of chaos. Peace comes when we stop fighting what is happening and start accepting that not everything is under our control. Peace is trusting that even though you do not know exactly how everything is going to unfold, you are being guided. I remember moments when everything seemed uncertain and fear and anxiety took over. But when I allowed myself to be still and breathe, I began to realize that fear and anxiety weren't real. They were just fleeting emotions that arose when I tried to control what I could not control. When I accepted the uncertainty and returned to the present moment, I found peace. So the way to release anxiety is simple. Breathe and come back to the present. Don't worry about the future, don't dwell on the past. Just be where you are now with all your worries and emotions. Accept them as part of the human experience, but don't let them take over your life. When you surrender to the experience of the present, you begin to free yourself from the weight of anxiety. But how do we actually release anxiety and find peace in the midst of chaos? The answer lies in a simple yet powerful practice. Every time you feel anxiety taking over, stop what you're doing. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Don't fight it. Don't try to force an immediate solution. Just be with what you're feeling. And as you do that, you'll begin to notice that the anxiety begins to diminish, making room for peace. And as you allow yourself to feel and release the fear, true peace begins to take hold. Not the peace that comes from solving all the problems, but the peace that comes from trusting that everything is exactly where it needs to be. The peace that comes from connecting with the present and knowing that you are being led step by step to what is best for you. Now that you've understood how to release anxiety, you may be asking yourself, how can I really trust this process and let go of what's holding me back without fear of the future? What else can we do to find a true sense of peace, even when everything seems uncertain? When everything seems to be going wrong and you feel lost, it's natural to look outside yourself for answers. We seek advice from friends, look for quick fixes on the internet, or even try to find comfort in material things or the distractions of the world. Society teaches us that happiness and peace come from the outside, from finding the right person, from achieving success, from having more. But the truth you need to know is that the answer you're looking for is not outside of you, it's within. I know the temptation is often great. When we're going through difficult times, it's easy to look at the world and think that the solution is out there, in something or someone. But my friend, everything you need to find true peace and direction is already within you. This may sound too simple, but it is the deepest truth of all. Peace doesn't depend on external circumstances. It begins in the heart, in your connection to the divine and to yourself. When you're lost, the tendency is to look for external solutions, to try to solve everything with what you can in the physical world. But did you know that the more you look outside, the further away you get from your true essence? True power comes from within. The answers to your doubts, to your deepest questions, are stored within, waiting to be discovered. I remember moments in my life when I also looked outside, when I thought the answer to my peace and clarity was in the situations I was experiencing or in the people around me. What I realized, however, was that the more I looked outside, the further away I got from true peace. It was only when I turned inward to my connection with the Father that the real answer came. And this answer didn't come from external words or actions, but from a deep sense of certainty and trust that arose within me. The truth is that life, with all its uncertainties and challenges, teaches us a great lesson. True peace is not something we can achieve or seek outside of ourselves, but something we must recognize within ourselves. When you begin to look within, you begin to realize that deep down you already have all the answers. What you need to do is silence the world around you. Stop looking outside and start listening to what is already engraved in your heart. This doesn't mean that you should isolate yourself or ignore the world around you. Of course, you can seek support from friends, family, or even wise counsel, but the real strength, the real guide for your life, is within you. The Father has given you the ability to connect with Him, to listen to your inner voice, and to make decisions based on the wisdom that already resides in your heart. When you feel lost and don't know where to go, the first step is to stop looking outward and start looking inward. Notice what your heart is saying, what your soul is really searching for. You have the power to access that deep wisdom that is not influenced by external circumstances, but by the truth that is eternal. I know this can be challenging, especially in times of great uncertainty. But believe me, by making this inner shift of looking inward first, you begin to reconnect with the greater purpose of your life. And as you do, the answers begin to emerge clearly, even if they don't come immediately. Peace begins to settle in because you finally accept that the real solution comes from your connection to the divine that dwells within you. I've seen this happen with so many people. As they moved away from the idea that the solution was outside of them, they began to look within. And there they found the clarity, peace, and strength they needed to move forward. And that's what you can find too, dear friend. When you stop looking outward and start looking inward, you reconnect with your essence, with the truth that resides within you. And from that connection comes true power. This change of focus, of looking in instead of out, is liberating. It's not about withdrawing from the world, it's about realizing that the outside world is just a reflection of what's inside. As you heal and transform your inner self, the outer reality begins to reflect that transformation in a natural way. No matter what is happening around you, you will find strength, serenity, and confidence within yourself. Now that you know that the answers you seek are within you, you may ask yourself, how can I connect more deeply with this inner wisdom, especially when I'm lost and directionless? How can I trust my own intuition more and hear clearly what my heart really needs? When you're lost, the world around you seems like chaos. Worries, fears, insecurities, everything screams for attention. And in this whirlwind, what you really need most is silence. Yes, silence. It may seem strange, but it is in silence that the answers to your doubts and fears begin to emerge. I know it can be hard to imagine how silence can be the solution. When everything seems to be falling apart, the first reaction is to look for quick answers, to act frantically to fix things, to find a way to solve the problem in the noise. But what you need to know is that in silence, in stillness, the answers come more clearly and more truly. Silence is not empty. It is full of the wisdom that you need. And in silence, you begin to hear God's voice that has always been there, waiting to be heard. I used to tell people, when things seem most confusing, seek silence. When the turmoil of life makes everything more difficult to understand, the solution is not to seek more external information or to try to control what is happening. The solution is to silence the world around you and listen to what your heart and soul have to say. Silence is where you reconnect with the divine. It's where the peace you seek is revealed. Silence has a transformative power because it creates a space within us where God's wisdom can manifest. When we are surrounded by noise, we overload our minds, and this prevents us from seeing clearly. But when we allow ourselves to be silent, the mind slows down, the heart opens, and we can finally hear the guidance we need. I too have experienced moments of confusion when everything around me seemed out of place. But it was in the silence, in the stillness, that I was able to see that the solution was not in doing but in being. To be present, to be receptive to what God was already showing me. Silence in this sense is a form of surrender. When you silence yourself, you surrender your desire for control, and you become more receptive to the greater plan unfolding before you. Throughout life, the temptation to act is great. We want to solve things quickly, change circumstances, correct mistakes, and speed up processes. But it is in silence that you find the space for reflection, for introspection, for a true connection with your being. This silent space allows divine love to enter your heart and begin to heal what needs to be healed. The key to finding the power of silence is to allow yourself to stop. We often think we have to do something to change things, but real change begins within. When you allow yourself to quiet your mind and emotions, you create space for the miracle of transformation. This doesn't mean that you need to isolate yourself or withdraw from the world, but rather that you should create moments of stillness where you can listen to your inner voice and feel God's presence in your life. I invite you to try this. When you feel lost, instead of running around looking for answers, stop for a moment. Breathe and be still. Don't worry about what's going on around you or what you think you should be doing. Just be present in the moment. This stillness will open a space within you where the peace you seek will begin to emerge. We often feel lost because we're so focused on what's going on around us that we forget to look inward. When you create a moment of stillness, you begin to hear the truth that is held within you. The feeling of disorientation will begin to dissipate, and you'll begin to see things from a clearer, calmer perspective. Silence is a powerful ally, and you'll find that as you practice it, the answers come to you in a gentle, unhurried way, but with renewed clarity. So when all seems lost, when chaos takes over, remember, silence is your refuge. It is the space where true peace is found, where divine wisdom speaks softly to your heart, and it is in silence that you begin to realize that nothing is actually lost. The answers have always been within you, waiting to be heard. Now that you understand the power of silence, you may ask yourself, how can I actually connect with this silence and use its power to guide me when I feel lost? How can I turn chaos into stillness and find the direction I need? Have you ever noticed how life often doesn't turn out the way we planned? Maybe no matter how hard we try, something always leads us astray. Have you ever felt that way? As if you were walking down a path and suddenly everything changed unexpectedly. The detour may seem like a bad thing, something that interrupts our plans and takes us away from the goal we had in mind. But the truth is that it's often in the detours that we find our true direction. I've seen this happen in many lives. When people deviate from what they thought was the right path, they end up discovering a new path that takes them to places they never imagined. And it is often in these detours that we find the true essence of who we are and what we are meant to be. What seems like a loss or a mistake is actually an opportunity to grow in ways you never could have imagined if you had followed the right path. I've been there myself. Throughout my journey, I have seen many people who, when they felt lost or off track, discovered something much deeper than what they were looking for. What seemed like a mistake, a detour, became a path to transformation. When we are lost, we are actually in a space of deconstruction where something new is about to be born. Sometimes you have to get lost to really find yourself. When you find yourself on a detour, the temptation is to go back to what was familiar, to what seemed to be the only possible direction. But what you don't realize is that life's detours are like shortcuts that lead us to something deeper. They challenge us to look inward, to examine our beliefs and to open ourselves to new possibilities. Deep down, these detours help us find what really matters, even if we don't have the full picture of what's happening at that moment. Life is never linear. The search for something meaningful doesn't follow a straight path, as we often wish it would. Sometimes you have to get lost, take an unexpected path for the true meaning of your life to reveal itself. This can be uncomfortable at first, and the uncertainty can be frightening. But know that this detour is actually the key to your growth. I want you to imagine the following scene. A man sets out on a journey, determined to reach a certain destination. Along the way, however, he encounters an obstacle, something that causes him to veer off course. He could have become frustrated and tried to force his way back, but as he follows this new path, he finds something unexpected, a peace he didn't know he was looking for, an understanding of himself that he would never have reached if he had followed his original path. This detour, far from being a mistake, is what brings him closer to his destiny. Detours, as I see them, are always moments of revelation. They force us out of our comfort zone and make us question what we are really looking for. What seemed to be an obstacle is often exactly what we need to rediscover our truth. Don't underestimate the power of a detour, because it can be the turning point you've been waiting for. When we lose our way, we begin to realize that true direction lies not in rigid control of the path, but in our ability to adapt to the changes that life offers us. These detours don't take us away from our journey, but help us to understand ourselves in a deeper and more authentic way. And it is in this process that true transformation takes place. We often feel frustrated when we can't follow the plan we have in mind. But what we don't see at first is that life's detours lead us to a place of peace and true purpose. The detour gives us the opportunity to look away and realize that there are new paths to explore, new possibilities to experience. I've had many detours in my life, moments when things didn't turn out the way I had planned, but over time I realized that these detours were essential to my growth and understanding. They led me to places where I was able to better understand who I really am and what the true purpose of my life is. So the next time you feel lost, when life takes you down a path you didn't expect, remember that you may be exactly where you need to be. The detour is not the end, it is the beginning of something new. It is on the detour that you can discover what is truly important, what is waiting to be revealed. Now, with this new perspective on life's detours, you may ask yourself, how can I embrace these moments of disorientation and turn what seems like a mistake into an opportunity for growth? How can I trust the process and let life lead me where it wants me to go, even when the path doesn't seem clear? Do you ever feel like you're carrying a huge weight on your back, trying to solve everything on your own? The burdens of life can be heavy, and it often feels like there's no way to handle all the responsibilities, doubts, and fears. When we feel lost, the desire to control everything and find an immediate solution can be overwhelming. But right now, the answer you need to hear most is to put the weight in God's hands. Trust Him. I know that the idea of letting go can seem difficult, especially when we are used to struggling alone, carrying our worries, our fears, as if it were our responsibility to solve everything. Society teaches us to be strong, not to ask for help, to fight to the end. But true strength comes when we have the humility to realize that we can't do everything on our own. And it is at this point that trust in the Father becomes the key to finding true peace. When I faced difficult times, when the weight of the crowds and circumstances seemed overwhelming, the only thing that kept me going was complete trust in the Father. I knew that no matter how arduous and uncertain the path, He was with me. He always was. This trust doesn't mean that problems will disappear overnight, but rather that you can find the strength to face them, knowing that you are not alone. True trust in the Father is the ability to relinquish control, to allow Him to guide your steps. It doesn't mean being passive or failing to act when necessary. It means knowing that deep down, the direction you are looking for has already been given. Often what prevents us from seeing the answer we are looking for is our desire to control everything, to decide at all costs what the best path is. But when you put that control in His hands, you begin to feel a lightness that you never thought possible before. Trusting the Father goes beyond simple faith. It's not just believing that He exists, but trusting in His guidance, in His plan for your life. I've seen this in many lives around me, people who, by surrendering their fears and worries to the Father, began to see how perfectly things fit together. Sometimes what seems like a loss or a detour is actually God's hand leading us to something even greater, something we can't see at the moment, but that He already knows. I know it's hard to trust when everything around you seems uncertain, but remember, trust is not based on what we see or feel, but on what we know deep in our hearts, that the Father cares for us, that He will never leave us, that He has a perfect plan for each one of us. Even when you feel lost, know that He is there, supporting you every step of the way, guiding you along a path that may not be visible now, but is being mapped out with divine love and wisdom. When you learn to put your weight in God's hands, you begin to realize that worry and fear don't change the situation. They only add to the burden you're carrying. On the contrary, when you trust Him completely, you begin to free yourself from that weight. It doesn't mean you'll be free of challenges, but it does mean you'll be stronger to face them. True peace comes from that surrender, that trust. I know you often want immediate answers. You want to see the result right now. You want to understand everything right now. But trusting the Father means knowing that He not only has the answer, but that He has already prepared the way. And all you have to do is trust His timing. When you allow yourself to rest in this trust, you begin to see things unfolding with a clarity that seemed impossible before. Trusting the Father is a daily movement, a choice we make every moment. It's not something that comes from outside, it's born within. And when you begin to trust, to feel that you are in His hands, something inside you begins to change. The weight of fear and worry begins to dissipate, and you find a direction that seemed invisible before. God knows what is best for you, and when you relinquish control, He guides you with love and wisdom. I invite you now to pause and reflect. What have you been carrying alone that you could place in God's hands? What fears, doubts, and worries have been weighing on your heart? Today you can begin to surrender them to Him, trusting that He has the best for you. Surrender is not a sign of weakness, but of an inner strength that recognizes that with God all things are possible. Now you may be asking yourself, how do I truly place my life in God's hands and trust that He has the best for me, even when the circumstances around me seem so challenging? How can I live this trust to the fullest, day in and day out, without being overwhelmed by fear and anxiety? In moments of darkness, when confusion and despair take over, it can feel like the light has gone out and there is no hope. Have you ever felt that way, like you're in a tunnel with no way out and no idea where you're going? The feeling of being lost without direction can be overwhelming. But I tell you, dear friend, the light never goes out. Even in the darkest of nights, it's there, waiting to be seen. When everything around you seems to be falling down, it's easy to fall into the temptation of believing that the darkness is permanent. The pain, the doubt, the fear can create a feeling that nothing will ever get better, that the light will never be seen again. But this is a lie. God's light, the light He has placed in you, never goes out. It may seem distant at times, but it will always be there, ready to be recognized, even in the most difficult situations. I myself have gone through times of great suffering and loneliness. I've seen the pain take hold of those around me and even myself, but I've always known that the divine light never goes out. Even when all seemed lost, there was always a flame, however small, in every heart. And it was that light that guided me. This light does not depend on external circumstances, but is the presence of God within each of us, a light that can never be extinguished. When you feel lost and everything around you is in darkness, the first step is to recognize this light. It is within you. No matter how dark the path seems, the light that God has placed in your heart never goes out. Sometimes it just needs a moment of stillness, a moment of trust, to begin to shine again. Light is not something that comes from outside. It is already within you, waiting to be recognized. Darkness, no matter how intense, can never extinguish the light. It can hide the light for a while, but it can never extinguish it completely. When you feel lost, when fear and pain seem unbearable, remember this: the light you seek is within you, and as you recognize that light, you begin to see that even in the darkness, there is always something within you that can guide you. I see many people, when they go through difficult times, turn away from the light that God has placed in their hearts. Fear and doubt cover that light and make them feel lost and alone. But the truth is that even in the midst of the greatest storm, God never leaves us. His light is always with us, whether in pain, loss, or confusion. And that light is what guides us back to our path. When everything around you seems dark, look within. Light doesn't come from outside. Don't wait for the world or circumstances to change before you find that light. It's already within you, waiting to be accessed. What you have to do is allow it to shine. And to do that, you have to trust in your connection to the divine, to believe that even in difficulties you are never alone. The divine light is your strength, your courage, your wisdom. When you connect with it, no matter how dense the darkness around you, you will find the clarity you need to move forward. The path may still seem uncertain, but with the light within, your fear begins to diminish, and trust in God begins to grow. He is your light, and where He is, there is no darkness that can prevail. Now you may ask yourself, how can I access this light, especially when everything around me seems so dark and confusing? How can I trust that the light within me is enough to guide me even when the path seems endless? The answer lies in inner peace, in silence, in trusting that God never leaves us alone and that His light will always lead us back to the path of peace and truth. In the midst of confusion, chaos, and the feeling of being lost, we often forget the simplest and most powerful thing we can do: return to love. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But in difficult times, love often seems distant, as if it were a difficult emotion to reach in the midst of pain and suffering. And it is precisely when we feel most lost that we need to return to love, not romantic love or superficial love, but the pure, unconditional love that comes from God and lives in each of our hearts. When you feel lost, the temptation is to look outward, to look for solutions anywhere but within yourself. We look for answers in books, in the advice of others, in temporary distractions. But the real answer lies in something simple and profound: returning to the love that you are. The love of God that is always within you. This love doesn't depend on circumstances. It doesn't depend on flaws or mistakes. It just is, and it will always be there, waiting to be accessed when you choose to return to it. I've seen many people go through difficult times, and what transformed them was not the constant search for a solution, but the return to love. When you begin to connect with the love that is God, something profound happens within you. Answers begin to emerge, peace begins to invade your heart, and slowly you begin to realize that what seemed lost wasn't really lost. It was just waiting to be found in the sacred space of love. Love, when truly experienced, has the power to transform everything. When you choose to love yourself, to love others, to love life, you begin to reconnect with your truth. Love is not something you have to find outside of yourself, but something you have to recognize within yourself. When you return to love, you return to the essence of who you really are. And that reconnection is what brings you the peace, clarity, and direction you seek. God's love is always the starting point for true transformation. If you are lost, you're not lost in love. Love is always there, always available. It is the thread that connects you to all that is good and true. It is through love that you find your true direction. And as you begin to open up to this unconditional love, the fear and anxiety that holds you back begins to disappear as you realize that there is nothing to fear when you are safe in divine love. I remember so many times when, even in moments of great suffering, I found strength and clarity by turning to love. Love doesn't make difficulties disappear, but it gives us the strength to face them with confidence and peace. Returning to love is not about escaping challenges. It's about facing them with the certainty that deep down you are never alone. Love is what keeps you going, what gives you the strength to keep going. Returning to love also means forgiving yourself, forgiving others. Forgiveness is the key to freeing yourself from the weight of the past and allowing love to flow freely again. Often we get stuck in our mistakes, our faults, or what others have done to us, but when you choose to return to love, you choose to let go of pain, resentment, guilt, and shame. You choose to see life and others with the eyes of the heart, with compassion, with forgiveness. As you do this, something magical happens. The energy of love begins to take over your being. You feel a lightness that wasn't there before. You begin to realize that in spite of everything, love is what really matters. Love heals you, guides you, and brings you back to the path you really want to walk. It's not something far away. It's your truth, and when you return to it, you return to your purpose. I know that returning to love can sometimes seem difficult, especially when the pain seems too great. But remember, love is always within you, waiting to be accessed. No matter how far you've lost yourself, love will always be the way back. It guides you, sustains you, and renews you. And most importantly, when you return to love, you begin to realize that deep down you were never really lost. Love has always been your path and always will be. Now that you know that the way is to return to love, you may ask yourself, how can I begin to live this love more fully, especially when the pain and fear seem so great? How can I connect more deeply with divine love and let it guide my life, even in the most difficult moments? When fear takes over, it feels like the world is closing in, that there is no way out, that the challenges are too great to face. Fear can be an overwhelming presence, making you question your abilities, your choices, even the purpose of your journey. But the truth is that fear, no matter how intense, is never stronger than the courage that resides within you. And it is courage, not the absence of fear, that truly empowers us. Have you ever felt fear paralyze your steps, as if you were stuck in a place with no movement, not knowing what to do next? I understand that feeling. Fear has the power to make us believe that we are helpless, that we have no control over what is happening. But deep down, fear is not something to be avoided or rejected. Fear is a sign that there is something valuable to be conquered, something worth facing. When you find yourself facing fear, know that it is actually inviting you to grow. Fear comes when we are about to take a big step, when we are about to leave our comfort zone and achieve something new. It is a reflection of change, of the unknown, and instead of letting fear take over, it's when you choose to face it that true strength begins to reveal itself. I remember moments in my own journey when fear seemed unbearable. Doubt and uncertainty were all around me, but instead of surrendering, I chose to trust. I chose to take a step, however small, toward what I knew was my destiny. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward even when fear is present. And it is from this courage that true inner strength comes. Fear only has power over us when we allow it to control our actions. When you choose to look fear in the face, it loses its power. It becomes just a temporary sensation, something that passes when you choose not to surrender to it. Courage doesn't mean ignoring fear or trying to push it away. It means choosing to move forward, in spite of it. And with every step you take, the fear loses its intensity. I know it can seem difficult, especially when the challenges are great and doubts arise. But remember, true strength comes from trust. When you trust that you are being guided by something greater, that the Father is at your side in every moment, courage begins to blossom. It is a strength that comes from the heart, from knowing that you are not alone, that no matter how difficult the path may seem, you have the ability to face it. The secret is in taking the first step. Fear will always seem greater when we stand still, when we are stuck in doubt and uncertainty. But when you start walking, when you take that first step into the unknown, courage begins to manifest. It grows with every step you take, until eventually, fear no longer has control over you. I've seen many people, when they make the decision to act in spite of fear, find a strength they didn't know they had. And that strength comes from within. It doesn't come from a big external change, but from an internal decision not to be paralyzed. When you choose not to be controlled by fear, you begin to realize that courage has always been inside you, waiting to be awakened. Now you may ask yourself, how can I transform fear into courage in my own life? How can I face challenges with confidence, even when the fear seems so great? The answer lies in taking the first step. Even if you don't have all the answers, even if fear is present, choose to move forward with faith, with the confidence that each step will bring you closer to your true strength. And remember, courage is not born in the absence of fear, but in the choice to act with it, not against it. In moments of crisis, confusion, when you feel lost, the tendency is to want a quick change, an instant transformation. Who hasn't wished they could solve all their problems at once, or find the miracle solution that would put them out of their misery and back on the right track? I understand this feeling. Pain and uncertainty can make us want to rush the process, but the secret to healing, to true transformation, often lies in small steps. I want you to think back to a difficult moment in your life when everything seemed out of control. What did you do in that moment? Perhaps you felt overwhelmed and wished things would change quickly. But the truth is that true healing doesn't come from great leaps, but from small steps taken with courage and patience. Healing is not something that happens suddenly, but something that is built up step by step, with trust in the process and in time. When you feel lost, the first step can seem the hardest. It seems that the weight of uncertainty is too great, that the path is too long to walk. But if you look closely, you'll see that healing often begins not with a grand gesture, but with a simple step. It could be the simple act of taking a deep breath, stopping for a moment and giving yourself permission to feel. What seems small and insignificant is actually the first movement toward healing. I have always told people that even when the path seems uncertain, the important thing is to take one step at a time. It doesn't matter how small that step is. What matters is that you start. We often think that we need to have all the answers and solutions at once, but the truth is that life unfolds little by little, with patience and perseverance. The healing process is gradual, and each small step is a victory. Sometimes the pain makes us want to avoid the path, to run away from reality, but small steps are the key to facing the pain and growing from it. If you allow yourself to take small steps, you don't have to be afraid of pain, because you're moving in the right direction, even if you can't see the full distance. The movement toward healing begins the moment you decide to take that first step, no matter how small it may seem. I remember many times on my journey when each step felt like an effort, but each of those small steps brought me closer to something greater, closer to a deeper understanding of what really matters. When you're lost, the tendency is to want to see the big picture right away, to want the solution now. But healing and the path to peace come slowly, and instead of focusing on the end goal, you should focus on the step ahead, in the now. Remember, the way to healing is not to do everything at once, but to take the first step with confidence, and then the next and the next, until you find yourself stronger, more healed, more at peace. Each step is an opportunity to heal, to reconnect with your essence. It's not about speed, but about consistency, about moving forward even when the path seems uncertain. Small steps may seem insignificant at first, but in the end, they are the ones that really make a difference. I've seen this in many lives around me. Those who allowed themselves to take small steps, even when the pain seemed unbearable, were the ones who eventually found true peace. The healing process is sacred and profound, and it is in those moments when you allow yourself to take those small steps that true transformation takes place. Now I ask you, what is the first step you can take, no matter how small, to begin your healing journey? It can be something as simple as a moment of silence, a moment of prayer, a step toward forgiving yourself or someone else. Healing begins when you decide, even in the midst of pain, to take that small step toward your transformation. Remember, The road is long, but each step you take is progress toward peace and healing. And with each step, you grow stronger. There are times when we feel like we're swimming against the current of life, fighting, resisting, trying to force things to be the way we want them to be. But the more we try to control, the more tired and frustrated we become. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling that no matter how hard you try, nothing seems to work the way it should. This is a sign that it's time to stop fighting life and start accepting it as it is. I know it can be difficult to accept what is happening. It seems that if we don't fight, everything will fall apart. But the truth is that life has a natural flow, a divine order that is always guiding each of us, even when we can't see it. If you resist, if you fight against what is already happening, you just wear yourself out without really changing the situation. But when you learn to flow with life, something miraculous happens. The answers begin to come naturally. Peace begins to settle in, and the path becomes clearer. Accepting the flow of life doesn't mean becoming passive or letting things happen without taking action. It means trusting that there is a purpose in everything, that even challenges have something to teach. Resistance is born of fear, fear of losing control, fear of the unknown, fear of not being enough. But when you choose to trust, when you choose to accept that every moment has meaning, life becomes less heavy, less turbulent. I have seen many people who, by accepting the flow of life, began to experience a peace they had never felt before. They stopped clinging to rigid expectations, stopped trying to control everything around them, and instead began to trust that life was taking them exactly where they needed to be. And that's what you can do too. Accepting the flow of life means letting go of the need to understand everything right now. It means trusting that even when things don't make sense in the moment, there is a greater purpose being designed. Often, we get stuck in thoughts of how life should be, instead of accepting how it really is. But this inner struggle only creates suffering. When you let go, when you stop trying to force everything to be your way, you find freedom. This doesn't mean you don't have desires or dreams. It means that you trust the timing of things, that you understand that not everything has to happen exactly the way you want it to. It means that instead of forcing life to follow a predetermined script, you open yourself up to unexpected possibilities, to the lessons that only come when we are willing to look beyond our own expectations. I remember moments when life seemed to take me down paths I hadn't planned. At first I resisted, wanting things to be different, but over time I realized that whenever I stopped fighting and accepted what was happening, I found a deeper meaning to what I was experiencing. Acceptance brought me a clarity that resistance never could. Have you noticed that resistance only increases suffering? Have you noticed that the more you resist reality, the harder everything seems? Try for a moment to simply accept. Accept that you are where you need to be right now. Accept that life is leading you even if you don't understand where yet. This is the true act of trust, and in it you will find the peace you so desperately seek. Now you may ask yourself, but how can I truly accept the flow of life without feeling powerless or without letting go of my dreams and goals? How can I trust that life is taking me where I need to be, even when I don't see a clear path ahead? When we feel lost, it's common to look outside ourselves for answers. We look for solutions in circumstances, in others, in external things. But the real answer, the simple and profound answer, is within you. The kingdom of heaven is not something far away. It's not a place to be reached after a long journey. The kingdom of heaven is within you, waiting to be discovered, lived, and experienced here and now. We often spend our whole lives looking for peace, happiness, and meaning outside of ourselves, in things that can give us a temporary sense of satisfaction. But deep down we know that these things are not the real answer. They may give us momentary pleasure, but they don't fulfill us in any lasting way. What truly fills our hearts and gives us peace is the connection to the divine that dwells within us. I've always said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. These words are more than a teaching. They are the key to understanding the true nature of life. We don't have to look for God or peace in a distant place, because God is already within us, and the peace we seek is already in our hearts, waiting to be recognized. When you feel lost, you are actually estranged from your connection to this inner truth. The kingdom of heaven is not something to be conquered or achieved at some future time. It is present within you now, waiting to be experienced and manifested in your daily life. It is in the way you relate to yourself, to others, and to life. Simple answer to feeling lost is to return to your inner self, to reconnect with your divine essence. When you look within, you will see that there is no need to look outside yourself for the answers that are already engraved in your heart. True peace, true wisdom, and true purpose are within you. And when you access this inner truth, everything that seemed uncertain and confusing begins to make sense. I understand that in the midst of life's difficulties, it can be difficult to believe that peace and clarity are already within you. The temptation is to look outward, to circumstances, to situations beyond our control. But I invite you to look within. Look within for the answer to what you need right now. Life is already guiding you, and you are more connected to it than you realize. The key is to trust that the kingdom of heaven is not a distant promise or something to be achieved after death. The kingdom of heaven is a reality that can be experienced here and now in your daily life. And it begins with a simple gesture, turning inward, becoming still, and allowing the divine light within you to reveal itself. As you reconnect with this truth, you begin to live differently. The peace you so desperately seek doesn't depend on the circumstances around you, but on your connection to the divine that lives within you. When you allow yourself to live this truth, you realize that even in the most challenging situations, you already have the strength, wisdom, and peace to deal with whatever comes your way. Now I ask you, what do you need to let go of? What do you need to release in order to reconnect with this truth within you? What are the beliefs, insecurities, or fears that are keeping you from realizing the kingdom of heaven that already lives in your heart? When you make that connection, you'll realize that you were never really lost. True direction is within you, and it is always accessible, always present. You are not lost. The truth is that the answer to all your doubts and fears has always been within you. Every challenge, every moment of uncertainty is just an invitation to return to your heart, where peace and divine wisdom reside. The kingdom of heaven is not a distant place. It's a reality that you can live now here within you. When you trust the Father, when you accept the flow of life, when you reconnect with the light that never goes out, clarity and peace will begin to fill every part of your being. Fear loses its power, pain becomes strength, and true direction appears before you step by step. You have the strength to overcome any obstacle, for that strength comes from within you, from the divine that dwells in your heart. Never forget, you are guided, you are loved, and the path to peace is already within your grasp. May your journey be illuminated by divine light. May your soul find peace in every step you take, and may you remember every day that the kingdom of heaven is within you, waiting to be experienced. May God's peace, wisdom, and love be with each of you now and always. Amen.